Well, good morning, good citizens. It's another episode of Unpublic. Today we have office hours, which is just me live without a guest and live without a net or live on the wire, however you want to put it. It's good to see you again this morning. Welcome to Brunch. This is our daily conversation about education and the future of our kids in a fact-filled, fact-based universe to beat out the alternative fact universe that many people are living in when it comes to our children. Good morning, fam. Welcome. As I said yesterday, we are out of mimosas, but try the chicken and waffles and tip your servers. Welcome to brunch, fam. Appreciate you all. So today in office hours, I had to think last night, about all of the news of the week. What are the things that have struck me as important to keep talking about? And if you've been watching the last couple of weeks or listening to me or participating on Twitter, if we've engaged at all, we have probably been talking about the same things over and over and over again, which is critical race theory, racism in schools, how race plays out in our classrooms. Seems to be like an eternal conversation. And at some point, for me, I always look to find what is the light at the end of the tunnel. What is the thing that we should be striving for? How do we get just out of just having kind of like circular conversations, debates about race? What's the bright spot? Like, what's the North Star? What's the signal through the noise? And I have to admit, it's really tough in the conversations that we're having right now to find that point of agreement or that point of common ground, the bright spot, the thing that you can look forward to and say, this is a logical answer that helps us get out of the problematic questions that we're living in. This is the three-step process, or this is the way in which we can find ourselves to be more in agreement with each other so that we can push forward on the things that really matter in education. And it's really hard to get there because every day it's like an onslaught of new examples and new stories coming in that help us revive the problem rather than find the solutions. I think we're in like real trouble if we can't at some point, though, find like a way forward, the path, the answer. So see some of y'all coming in. Good morning to you that are showing up. Say good morning as you come into brunch or breakfast or whatever we're calling this, so that I can see who you are and say good morning to you. And welcome and thank you for coming on in to join us and to give us your time. As always, if you like the show, please share it with friends and families who you think might benefit, family members, I should say, who might benefit from a daily discussion about education and the future of education and what we could be doing for our kids better to help them succeed in school, in life, in their journey. So I want to show you a video. This is not to incense you or get you crazy mad or whatnot, but at the beginning, somebody sent it to me, so I'm going to share it with you. Embry Edwards, good morning, brother. Good to see you. Check your email and your Twitter messages right now, sir, please, because I dropped you a few and deposited a few messages to you in the last 2 days. Super important. Want to talk to you. So good morning, Emery. Thank you for jumping in, and anybody else who's coming in. Let me show you a quick video. I'm going to get it all set up for you here so that you can see it and that you can hear it. And then I'll catch you on the other side of this here. So.
The other day, I was walking down the hallway at Lakeview Elementary School to give a teacher a retiring gift. I looked up onto the wall and saw a BLM poster and an Amanda Gorman poster. In case you don't know who that chick is, she's some girl who did a poem at Biden's so-called inauguration. I was so mad. I was told 2 weeks ago at this very meeting spot, no politics in school. I believed what you said at this meeting. So at lunch, I went up to my principal to tell him about the BLM poster and that I wanted it down. He said it's not coming down. I was like, yeah, it is, because the school board said on May 25th, no BLM or politics in school. He said, that's weird. They were the ones who made them. I was stunned. When I was here 2 weeks ago, you told us to report any BLM in our schools. Apparently, they're in our schools because you made the signs. I said there should be no BLM in schools, period. It does not matter the color you make the posters and the font you use. We all understand the meaning. It is a political message about getting rid of police officers, rioting, burning buildings down while King Governor Welch just sits on his throne and watches. We all know. Changing the font or the color of posters does not change the meaning. I am 9 years old and I know that. You expect me to believe that you did not know what you were doing by making these posters? Come on, people. You have lied to me, and I am very disappointed in all of you. You cannot even follow your own rules. If you're going to do that, why do we follow any rules we deemed unfit or ridiculous? I'm not following your mask rule anymore then. Get the posters out of our schools. Courage is contagious, so be courageous.
District 1.
So I guess she told them. She's 9 years old. She's from Lakeville, Minnesota. She's a student at the Lakeville Public Schools in Minnesota. And it's an interesting kind of speech that she read there. I mean, first, I give her credit for number one, being involved and active and engaged. I give her credit for being able to read a speech. You know, who knows whether she wrote it or not, but she reads it well and she gets through it all quickly. With emphasis in different spots. So obviously she knows how to read and she does a good job with it. She also forcefully makes her points. She forcefully demands, get the BLM posters down out of here now. I said so. Has a very much like a master race tinge to it. So good for her for being so confident and capable. I'm raising a daughter. My daughter's not much older than she is. She's just a little bit older, a year older, as a matter of fact, than this young girl. My daughter is artistic and compassionate and empathetic. She's the type of person who can read a room and understand when people are feeling bad or hurting. She has empathetic friends who are very much the same way. She's not part of the mean girl collective. You know, on the school bus, there are kids that hurl insults, and there are kids that sit quietly, and there's kids that are gregarious and vivacious and make a lot of noise. And so there's a mix of different kinds of kids. And I don't know what kind of kids you want to raise, but I'm quite proud of my daughter. And I'm quite proud that my daughter would never stand in front of a school board and call Amanda Gorman that chick who gave a speech or gave some poetry or something at Biden's so-called election. So this comes down to what type of people do we want to raise? What type of schools do we want to facilitate kind of the growth of our young people? And ultimately, what kind of country do we want to produce out of the young people that we are training? And I can't blame a 9-year-old for standing in front of the school board and us screaming so nastily, if that's a word, at them with so many kind of problematic things in view. I just want to start with this Amanda Gorman piece, though, that she says here, because I actually think it's particularly kind of bad. When she says, Amanda Gorman, that chick, she's talking about a young woman who is the youngest poet in history to give the inaugural poem. She's overcome great odds, born in Los Angeles, not in Silver Spoon circumstances, definitely not in Lakeville, Minnesota necessarily, overcame a speech impediment, delivered just kind of a very poised, natural, uplifting, and unifying poem in a time that couldn't have been more turbulent and more divisive. And she did a good job of it. To teach your daughter that Amanda Gorman is that chick who gave a poem or gave a speech at Biden's so-called election, to me is more child abuse than anything that people are talking about when they talk about CRT and the wacky stories that they're pulling up. But when you think about the idea that apples don't fall far from trees, Lakeville, where this 9-year-old girl came to reprimand the board for having any teachers in the district that support Black Lives Matter. And the girl who came to say that Black Lives Matter is really just about eliminating police departments and rioting and looting, rather than a long-term struggle of people of color to feel safe and secure in their communities and free of intentional, very real, or indirect violence at the hands of state systems, including the schools, including the police, including the judges and the courts, and all of the systems, where there's empirical evidence over long periods of time that people of color should not feel irresponsibly comfortable, like toxically positive about the surroundings that they live in, because the empirical truth is your safety can be taken away from you as a person of color in the United States in many ways very quickly. And in her very school district, there's racism, and the district has a reason. One, because of the racism, but also because of the difference in educational outcomes, to constantly think about how they do better with making people of color safe in their school district and in their city. And yet, someone sent their 9-year-old daughter with a prepared speech to the school board to say that chick and BLM and all their rioting and looting and wanting to replace police officers and get that poster down, a poster that says Black Lives Matter. Imagine that. So you can have two responses to social movements like the civil rights movement, the suffrage movement, the movement for housing fairness in housing, fairness in lending, all of those things, the things that are corrective to America's past. One approach to that would be, if you're a person who's not one of the so-called protected classes, the groups of people who have been historically marginalized by law, by the Constitution, by social programs, by rules, just in every way you can possibly imagine. If you're not one of those people in the protected class, one way of looking at it is the empathetic way, which is, though I am not one of the people who is harmed by that, I care about people being harmed because I'm a human being, and I care about human beings not being harmed. That's the empathetic play. The other play is the jackass route, which is, I don't believe in the harming. I don't believe your stories. I don't believe in the empirical research that shows that you're being harmed. I don't believe in the marginalization. I don't believe that you have any disadvantages. I don't like the way you said it. I don't like your story. I don't like the way you protest. You can take a knee. I don't like that. You can scream. I don't like that. You can speak quietly and civilly. I don't like that. You can make your case before courts. I don't like that. You can ask systems to be better. You can ask systems to retrain their people. You can ask systems to indict themselves, or to at least interrogate themselves, to root out unfairness, to root out situations where you have certain groups of people because of their ethnicity, their language, their background, their abilities, their sexual orientation. You can discount what all of those people say, and that's the second route. Which one of those two routes in teaching our young people is the route towards a United States of America, a United States of America, and a school system that serves all equally well? Is that a good goal, even? Like, to have a school system that serves like all kids equally well? Be hard to get there if you don't do any of the question asking, right? Asking of the question, calling of the question, begging of the question. Are we fair? Are we just? Why are we having these different outcomes? When you ask questions like that, why do we have these differences in outcomes? How does this relate to the past? Why was it the same way 10 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago? When you ask questions like that, you are asking, especially if you're asking from the proper context, which is the context of empathy, you are asking questions that help get us to a better place, to a better future. When you deny, resist from a point of power and privilege, which is, I'm not affected by those things, so they must not exist. And as a matter of fact, If you want to be a victim, I get to be a victim too, even though all empirical truth tells you that when you send white people and black people into different systems, various different systems, you name the system and we'll find the same thing, that the outcomes are different for them, not on the basis of anything that comes down to merit or their effort or them as individuals, except for the differential in treatment due to race in the United States. Now, I'm not saying it's always, and I don't even want to like weaken my point by having to put this mea culpa in there. I'm not saying in all cases. I'm saying systemically speaking, if two people with the exact same resume apply for a job and one has a more black name or what's considered to be a more black name, even though the resume is the same, the number of times they will be called back for a job is different. The number of times that they will get an interview is different. The number of times that they will land the job is different. And it's the same with bank loans. It's the same with commercial loans. It's the same with schools and getting into gifted classes and getting into AP classes. Exact same students in terms of what their merit is on paper, but different outcomes. Again, you can have, if you want to have two Americas, go for it. There's a program for having one America, and there's a program for having two Americas. The program for one America is to ask empathetic questions that help you get to the bottom of hurting people. People who are being hurt, people who are hurting themselves, and systems that are doing the hurting. And if you're incurious at all about those questions, just say so. Like the cold, kind of nasty, chauvinistic, old school, let me be coldly rational and discount all of what you are saying about your pain and about your history and about your legacy and your position within the United States. If that's your route, just say it. Just put it out there and just say, be very honest, label it as, I actually just don't really care. I'm not a caring person. I don't care about your fight or your survival. Good morning, Elaine Wells. See you this morning. Emery Edwards says, when he looks at the video that we just showed of the little girl, he says, this is exactly the reason DEI, and by that you're meaning diversity, equity, and inclusion, is needed in curriculum. To be that indoctrinated at 9 is scary. Imagine the continued trajectory, like who this person becomes. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here today is, what is the logical outcome of teaching your kids to discount in this way and hate in this way? Does this person grow up to be somebody who brings people together? Or does this person grow up to be part of the two Americas, right? Because this is what's at play with us right now. Do we want to be a democracy? Do we want to have a shared country, a shared nation? Do you want to get past and beyond the kind of perennially problematic questions that just dog us? Questions about justice in our systems, and have we really achieved equality, the equal country that we wanted? That's the one America. And the two Americas is the one that is for sure looking to continue pushing and promoting division on purpose. So right now we have what I have been, in my mind, most aptly calling a white rights movement that is built on stoking grievance in white people from positions of privilege and power. When this 9-year-old shows up to the school board and says, take those posters down with that type of force, that is the sound of white supremacy speaking to you. That is not the sound of a one America trying to overcome its past, trying to take care of the problems in the family, trying to call out the things that are breaking the family apart. It's the sound of the pathology, the problem that will keep on persisting and will keep us divided and problematic. Elaine, I see you inviting other people in. I appreciate you. Ray Ankrum, you're back again this morning. See you. If you are listening to this, please share, he says. Ray is my dude. Thank you. Chris, your show is better when you don't have guests, except for Wednesdays and Fridays when I have other 8 Black Hands folks on. I am sure that's what you are saying, sir. I appreciate you. I want to raise this kind of one issue here about like enemy imaging let me get this right. Enemy imaging. Let me enunciate. Enemy imaging or creating enemy images is an important part of ongoing conflict, including wars and disputes. And it goes all the way from the top levels of like the United States at war, for instance, with the Soviet Union in a global battle for years, required large streams of narratives, like creating a narrative about the other. And the narrative that the United States had about the Soviet Union and the one that the Soviet Union had about the United States was a carefully crafted narrative that made the enemy real, like created images of the other side. And this that you see up on the screen right now is just a study about the development of these images. These the way that you imagine the enemy to be helps you continuously consider them a threat and be hateful towards them. This just very clearly says enemies and enemy images are thought to be prerequisites in preparedness for war. In spite of this knowledge, very little information is available about children's understanding of enemies and the emergence and the nature of enemy images. And people have studied this for years and years and years, but we haven't studied it down on the ground level. I thought this was important to bring it up because when we see a 9-year-old, like we did in this video at the beginning of this show up and say all the things that she said, she very clearly has an image of who BLM is, for instance, that is, number one, I don't think it fits with reality. There's just that, BLM, Black Lives Matter, is a statement of it's a reasserting and affirmation of something that is disputed in the United States, which is whether Black Lives Matter or not. It comes out of longstanding problems that the community has had with police officers not acting as if Black life is as valued as white life, as evidenced in the number of stops and stop and frisk and the abusive attitudes of many police officers towards young people in communities and killings, right? The flagrant way in which Black people lose their lives sometimes, and the police reports about those incidents don't match up with the reality of the witnesses oftentimes. That is the emergence of Black Lives Matter. The frustrations around Black lives not mattering is longstanding. So when someone shows up and reframes that thing that I just described to you, which is a real and valid problem with the way that your United States government and its agents handle and work with people of color and communities, to reframe that as being an attack on police officers and a justification for looting and rioting, to reduce it to that as she did, that's enemy imaging 101. Good job, right wing. You have taken something that should have just been a question where you should have just been curious. Well, why are Black people being treated differently in their communities by agents of the state? Why does the state have people that are working within communities that are treating them unjustly and in many cases unconstitutionally? Because we care about the Constitution, right? It's what conservatives, right-wing people like to talk about all the time, is the beauty of the Constitution. Constitution can be beautiful if it doesn't cover all people equally. So you should be curious whenever it doesn't. But the only reason that would stop you from being curious when the Constitution and all the noble documents of the United States aren't adding up for a group, seems like you become incurious when you have antipathy for a group of people. Like you just don't care whether it applies to them or not. Like Black people. So apparently Black lives don't matter. Oh, wow. They don't matter when they were 3/5 of a person. Doesn't matter when those lives post-Reconstruction were prevented from voting, living where they wanted to live, living how they wanted to live, speaking as freely in public as anybody else speaks in public, walking down the streets as freely as other people walk down the streets, not having to end up like Emmett Till or the voting rights people who, were having half of their torsos showing up in the rivers of Mississippi during the big push for voting rights and the freedom rides, blah, blah, blah. I could keep going, like all the ways. Do you need a lesson on how Black lives have not mattered in the United States, thus the need for a movement that asserts that Black lives should matter? Doesn't mean that you don't critique the movement or some of the actors or the players in that movement, or some of the theories or the philosophies of people within that movement, doesn't mean that you just don't think critically about them. It just means that, in my mind, it takes a stunning lack of empathy to make your entire view, your entire imaging of a movement of hurt people to be about the flaws that you see within their reasoning or in them just in general, rather than the problem that they are raising up. Again, which America do you want to train and raise young people for? The one America that's pluralistic, that involves people from all different religions and creeds, and in some cases, no religions and no creeds, backgrounds, in America where you have Mennonites who don't want to be on the grid, and you have people that are hippies in San Francisco, and you have people that are conservative Christians living in Jackson, Mississippi, and you have people that like want to be involved in high tech projects, and people that want to be involved in simple living, people that just want to live and thrive in a country where there's a seat for everybody to just be themselves, let their hair down, and live how they want to live. That's one America. One. And I'm using that word on purpose. One America. And you can't have that if the ghosts from the past have never been reconciled, right? The family who dances around dad's alcoholism problem and doesn't ever address it and keeps trying to put in the closet in a closet and keeps trying to shut that door, even as that closet is getting full of new artifacts that are based upon not dealing with and reckoning with the problem. And suddenly you can't even shut the door so much because you're trying to shove in there. That family is not on track for success and for health in the way of the family that is saying, let's call a thing a thing. Let's have some truth. Let's have some reconciliation. Let's have some addressing of the problems. Let's put in place some supports. Let's put into place some systems, some management strategies for handling the problem that we have. The problem would be if you have one family member who doesn't even want to talk about it. Don't want to talk about it. It's not a problem. I don't really see a problem. Just lock the door. Lock the closet. Keep pushing the stuff in there. And the other family member who is saying, no, got to talk about it. Not only do you have to talk about it, we have to plan for it. There's not a country in the world that actually handled these type of problems, I think, well, the way that we're handling them. You know, post 1945, Germany handled their problems in a very specific and direct way, head on. We're just going to have truth and reconciliation. We're going to have trials. We're going to have information gathering. We're going to look for all of the artifacts of the hate of the past. We're going to root them out, and we're going to remove them from public and social life so that we don't poison future children with the same artifacts of hate that got us to the problem that we had before. In the United States, we still have statues and monuments to people that attempted to overthrow the country so that they could defend their right to own human beings. We keep the artifacts up. We argue about how important and valid they are for our heritage. We translate hate into heritage. How different is our approach than Germany's on that? It's weird. You know, in South Africa, pretty similar situation. Yeah, we're going to have this monumentous change. We're going to end apartheid in South Africa. But along the way of doing that, we're going to have to do something really important. And we're going to have a process. Like there has to be a before and after process. Like you do want a before and after. America's, I think, real problem is they don't want a before and after. Like when people say make America great again, and you ask the question, but when was it like the time that you see as optimal? Like if we're going to go back in time to when we were great, give me the date so I can punch it into the time machine so that we can land there. Was it 1956, 1913, 1885? I mean, what year was it that we can punch into the time machine and go back to? And I can guarantee you in every one of those time machines, some of the same people that are arguing today for the maintenance of white privilege and white power to remain the norm rather than a pluralistic country, a one nation that is stronger because of its diversity, is stronger because of the numbers of people who can live freely in their own creeds and religions and backgrounds in the same country, which is the promise the future promise of America. It's the future promise of America. It is not the current reality of America, but it is the future promise that we strive to. It is the part of the one America rather than the two Americas that people seem so conditioned to fight for right now. Let me check in with a couple of you folks saying, Peter, everybody who comes to brunch every day here in the free world of Unpublic understands that I'm bad with names, but your last name, I'm going to make a try at it. Witzerich. Peter, anyways, is your first name, I know for sure. In order for propaganda to work, the dominant power must dehumanize the other. Exactly. Enemy imaging 101 is you have to create a clear picture of who the enemy is and why they are ridiculous, why they are bad or threatening. And it has worked all throughout time. The black man, for instance, in the United States is one of the greatest weapons of propaganda and fear mongering. The black man who's going to either savage your wife or your daughters or your sisters is an old trope that lives on today, and it's the gift that keeps on giving in the way that you dehumanize black males today. It went through a period of the savage black male who smokes weed, in the, I want to say 1920s, and that jazz was really a propaganda tool of the savagery to rape white women. We mentioned Emmett Till earlier. Went through a period of the super predator in the 1980s and 1990s. And it always had an element of shiftless, lazy, immoral, not bound to any rules, the wanton black male, the absent father, the pimp, the hustler, the sellout, you name it, from left to right. The black male has a series of labels that can be tossed on him. So everything from the right-wing black male, who's the sellout, the shiftless kind of, house Negro, to the left wing of the, hip hop, weed smoking, sexually immoral individual. Those are images, those are narratives, and they carry lots of weight, and they poison the well for public esteem for black people, and specifically for black males, for instance. So when you produce policies that are aimed at supporting the humanity of black males or reversing some of the ill consequences of history on them, these are all the tropes that are working in the background. These are all this is the wallpaper of that discussion. All these narratives that I just said, this enemy imaging that was created in science laboratories years and years ago. And I don't mean that too jokingly, but to say that if you read scholarship over many years, going all the way back to your third president, Notes on Virginia, if you go back and read what your third president had to say about black people and the science of that time that he thought was most pertinent, it's the wallpaper of these discussions that we're still having today. I should bring that up too about your third president and Notes from Virginia, because your third president, unlike what many of you are saying today about how America was always meant to be, where we weren't going to be seen for the color of our skin and we were going to be judged by the content of our character, and your misreading of MLK, contrary to that, your third president told you that we would never get to a one America. We would never reach a time where blacks and whites could live together in the same country, which is why he actually believed that the more humane option would be to get rid of black people, to get them out of the country and repatriate them somewhere else, because in his mind, they would never be able to live side by side with white people, not as equals, and not as, and in his most humane moments in that writing, it was because he said that black people would always have a million recollections of the harm done to them by white people that would never go away, and that those harms would keep being redone by whites. This is your third president talking to you, saying that what I'm telling you, that we can have one America, that we can get to a place where all of our kids can sit together, where all of our people can share common ground, where we don't all have to agree, but we do have to agree on the fact that we're all human and that we all can share one place, one country, and that each voice should have a vote and a say in their country, and they shouldn't be overpowered by old dynamics of old power and old race kind of arrangements. We can get there if we face it. There's no way of getting over something without getting through something. So when we talk about these old problems of race, we don't get anywhere by just talking about them or disputing even some of the basic kind of empirical truths of that problem. We get to them by trying to say, what's our process for getting through it? And what other countries have done is they've created truth process, a process of truth, a process of reconciliation, and a process and a plan for power sharing in the aftermath. And that's what we need. And that's what we don't have right now. So Peter, thank you for your point on propaganda. Lane Wells, what are you saying here? Never mind all the systems put in place to keep them in the state that makes these images believable. And Cynthia Rose says the Willie Horton trope is alive and well. I missed the Willie Horton one. So Cynthia, thank you so much for that. I mean, I missed that. I mean, how can we miss the fact that Lee Atwater, look this up, Google it. I like to tell people to Google the things I say so that, you know, you fact check me and you make sure that I am being real about what I'm saying. Look up Lee Atwater, some of the admissions that he made about the strategies for saying nigger without saying nigger through policy and through propaganda. And he felt bad about it towards the end of his life, but he's responsible, I think, in large part for the Willie Horton ad and trope that that many of us remember so well. Many of us have probably forgotten about it, but you know, he's a Republican operative who had some pretty credible things to say towards the end of his life, as he knew that he was staring down the end of his life, and he felt bad for some of the things that he had done to stoke white grievance, to win elections, which is what we're going through right now. We're going through a period where the power to stoke white grievance in the 1940s, 1950s, 1970s, 1990s, 2010s, now, today, is the most reliable, kind of cheap and cartoonish power to have. You could do it at any time. So why should you do it? You should do it because you don't care about anything else but winning, and you know that it's reliable. If you can get a portion of the United States believing that Barack Obama was not born in the United States, that's a very usable ignorance. That ignorance is super usable. If you can get them obsessing about how him and his pastor want to convert the entire country, you know, paint the White House black and turn the whole country into a jihadist, organization or country, that's a usable ignorance. Go for it. Do it. I shouldn't say go for it and do it. I don't want you to do it. I want to talk just like quickly about peacekeeping, you know, and having a peaceful mind about these things. This is from UNESCO. So for those that you know, the United Nations and their educational, scientific, and cultural organizations. I don't know what you would call it, like group or whatever. They have a charter. And one of the things in that charter says, since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. I love that. I really, really, really love that as a reminder, because we have the power to imagine peace and to deconstruct the things that we know that do not lead to peace, that actually only lead to more problems. If this is our problem, this is information from the Pew Trust about race relations in the United States, that we have such differing opinions about where we are in race. You can see here on this one chart that, like, you know, it tells you something that you already know, that white and black people and other races too have kind of really divided ways of seeing, I don't know what you would call it, seeing how race works in the United States, and how they're experiencing race in the United States. So if you see that as the problem, you have to ask yourself, what's the solution to this? And there is a solution. I mean, mind you, we have a solution. We just don't use it yet. So what is it? I think it can be found in things like the truth and reconciliation process that I mentioned in South Africa, which is what this is. We need some sort of American version of this, but we're not going to get it. It's not going to happen in some big way, but it should. We also have groups like this that are popping up in different places in the world. Like this is called More in Common. Let me play this for you really quickly, and then we can come back at the end here.
A generation ago, the forces of democracy, freedom, and progress seemed unstoppable.
But here we are in the 2020s with democracies feeling weakened, unstable, and increasingly under threat.
Our societies are fracturing, and communities are being pulled apart.
More in Common is here to understand the forces that are dividing us and to find common ground.
Our name reflects our mission.
Even in societies that are polarized, we found that we have more in common than what divides us.
We work with partners to build the field of efforts to make democratic societies stronger, more resilient, and more united.
We're drawing from conversations with tens of thousands of people.
And from psychology and social science.
And we're testing real-world solutions on the ground.
It's going to take all of us.
Join us.
So what do you think? Possible? Does that win the day? It's kind of like one of those Morning in America speeches where it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like we can all come together. I want to believe it too. I really want to believe that it's possible. But like I said at the beginning of the show, it's just so amazing how every day we get new kind of more reasons to be outraged and to stay in the problem and to live in the problem. But I do believe that we can get there like this, better way. I want to show you another one. Look at this one. Now, this isn't a video, but I like the idea, the concept. This is a group. Let's come back to them. Here we are. They're called the Depolarization Project. Here you have Michelle Obama sitting with former First Lady, two First Ladies here, former First Lady Laura Bush. They're talking across lines of difference. We still see examples of this. The Bushes and the Obamas are friends. The Clintons are friends with the Bushes. But that's kind of like from a bygone era. And let me tell you where this starts breaking apart for me just a little bit. We do have to talk about race and racial reconciliation and truths as part of the process. So when I see a depolarization project like this, I think, good, this is a good start. This is what we should be doing. And then I say, let me take a look at your team. And I'm not even gonna mention it. What am I thinking, folks, when I see that? What am I thinking there? I'm thinking it's gonna be kind of hard to depolarize and have a conversation across lines of a difference if we don't really have a common table where everybody can sit together and be part of the change, be part of the Michelle Johnson's shaking her damn head in the morning for brunch. I'm trying to give you things to shake your head about, Michelle Johnson. If we can't all have a seat at the table of the truth and reconciliation process, it's going to be hard, I think, to get anywhere and to make progress. Here's where I'm landing at on all of this, and I would love to hear you, any of you in the comments right now. This is what I want to ask you for. It can be so easy for us to be in a time of cynicism and a time of obsession with the problem rather than an honest pursuit of the solution. The issues are so long-standing and vexing when it comes to race and justice in our society that they're not going to be quick and easy answers like we like. We live in a very microwave instant society. And the people who are addicted to the quick hits, the easy solutions, all that stuff, they're not the ones that we need right now. We need people who can live in complexity, think deeply about issues enough to be able to find complicated solutions. I don't know if it's complicated or complex. Someone help me in the comments here. So what I'm going to ask you for is I'm going to ask each of you to think about, like, what is one thing that you can see, small or big, that is an action step that can be taken that gets us pushing the ball forward. And I'm like literally asking you for this right now. So right now, I see your comments, and I love you all being here for breakfast or brunch or whatever it is where you are at. But what is something that you think is a critical step that could be taken? I mean, they could be like really simple steps, like, volunteering at a school to talk to a classroom about complex issues, maybe finding a debate team in a high school that's willing to talk about the critical thinking and help necessary to find a solution and helping to unpack it. I'm thinking about people like Colin Seals' work. He has a quote where he says, don't raise your voice, improve your argument. And his book, Thinking Like a Lawyer, his dedication to things like debate, I think could be really useful in helping young people understand how to think critically about these issues, not to think reactively or emotionally, or to have scripts prepared for them, like the 9-year-old girl in the beginning of this show who came to the school board and just read a string of kind of like images of the enemy, and the enemy being BLM and, social justice warriors. And maybe Colin is, I think, on the right path to help people think logically through kind of these, especially young people, think through these problems in a way that takes them out of their comfort zone. Perhaps it is that we put ourselves purposefully in very uncomfortable situations with the mandate of, I'm going to talk to people who seriously disagree with me on purpose. I'm going to do this. Maybe not all the time, but maybe in some setting or environment. And if I get mad or lose it, I'm going to consider it my failure and not theirs. That's a simple action step, and I could possibly do that. I'm so kind of like tired right now, worn out and fatigued by the debate, and mostly because I'm tired of gaslighting. So it's hard for me as an intellectual person, as a thinking person, as a person who likes to think through things, to have conversations with people when all they're trading are slogans and talking points. When someone says that CRT is indoctrinating our children and teaching them to hate the country that they live in, it's hard for me to engage in that conversation because everything about that argument is based on stupidity. And it's hard to have intellectual arguments that are based on stupidity. I don't even know why we should try oftentimes, right? Those are not honest assessments of the subject matter. Whether I agree with CRT is not even the question. It's just whether that's an accurate portrayal of it. If someone wanted to tell me that Marxism was about greed and making money, I would have to respectfully say, well, listen, I'm not a Marxist, but we can't have a conversation about that if that's your starting point, because I can't trade in stupid. I can't work with stupid. So if you want to work with stupid, keep have at her. Maybe you'll be president one day, because apparently that's one of the qualifications actually of, becoming some people's president. But I can't work with it very well. Anyways, that's me reverting. See, I'm going backwards now. I'm going back into not the solution, but back into the problem. Emory Edwards, what do you say, brother? Debate teams. I like that. Starting community-based debate teams, our legacy orgs and Divine Nine orgs should be able to lead in this space. I mean, I don't know if you all saw the news. Maybe it's been in the news multiple times. Black debate teams beating some real elite debate teams in ways that made news. Like, you'll see it pop up in your social media at different times. I want to say it was one of the HBCUs beat Harvard. There were some city kids in Baltimore. There's a Baltimore urban debate team or program that actually has had several notable wins or whatnot. I've always thought that there's a lot of power in that. Like, we could prepare young people a lot of ways, but preparing them intellectually to be able to understand arguments and to think through issues sufficiently to the point that they could argue themselves either way is a huge kind of gift to them over time, and it's already being done. So maybe there's some power for us in getting young people, not in shutting down what they can learn or how they can learn it or who they can learn it from, but in engendering in them the ability to be able to understand and formulate solid arguments on anything because they have the ability to think things through. Elaine Wales, I think Jane Elliott's Brown Eye, Blue Eye project with a modern spin on it would be a great way to gain understanding and admission of the existence of systemic and purpose-driven racism, and then talk about it. Elaine, I would love to talk about this one, because what I see in people right now about this suggestion that you have with Jane Elliott and her Blue Eye, Brown Eye kind of thing that she did years ago, that was a really jarring project for the people that were involved. And I can remember not long ago, I don't know how long ago, but there were people that had participated in that as kids who were talking about it as an adult, and they had very different kind of recollections of how that made them feel and whatnot. But right now, I mean, it's being written into the law that that we shouldn't disturb the conscience of white kids. I saw something earlier today. I'm going to see if I can find it right now really quick as we come, closer to an end here. But talking about the differences, political differences from Democrat to Republican about how people see CRT and why they think very differently about it. I'm going to pull it up right now if I can find it, because it was interesting to me that in the majority of the objections to CRT in the way that people were describing it, the objections had to deal with how it made white people feel. And Michelle Johnson, I know you're in here today, this morning, and you've brought this up a lot, that like a lot of this is just motivated about not making people feel bad. And the Jane Elliott stuff is definitely one that I can see, has the potential for backfiring, in that if too many white people go through that and come out the other end feeling really horrible about the training or whatever, that is the thing. And here it is, I found it. That is the thing that will turn them off to it and make them against it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying. So if you look at this is what critical race theory is in voters' own words. And, you can see in Democrats, independents, and Republicans, that's how this is broken up. And it's showing you based upon the positive things that people said in response to what it is, the more neutral things. And the neutral things are really kind of just like giving kind of a clinical explanation of what it is, and the negative. And the negative across all Democrats, independents, and Republicans all deal with how you're judging white people. So, it's masked a little bit, but look here, critical race theory is when you are in the race being judged. And the subtext of this is clearly the white people, right? And you can see here, the people said that it's just blacks, critical race theory is just black minorities wanting more, trying to change the history. A farce that attempts to blame all of society's ills on white people. A Marxist proposal to indoctrinate children by blaming white people. what is it, liberal New York Times crap about the entire history of the United States was founded on slavery, and every single white person is responsible just by being white. I'm just, you're just, reverse racism. It's the stuff you've heard before. I only bring this up to say, like, I wonder if a Jane Elliott thing could even be survived now. Like, we have, people have turned into such snowflakes, on these issues of being able to even say stuff like, there was this thing called, the Constitution, and in it, it definitely favored white landowning males. And the only way that document could be made usable for a pluralistic nation over time is through amendments, right? Like, you don't have a constitution that values all people, and the origins of things in the United States isn't an equal, freedom-loving, liberty country without amendments. It takes amendments to get you there, and acts like civil rights acts of the 1964 and those that came before it, and court cases, Brown v. Board and others. So this idea that we can't talk about that, but because you're going to feel bad about it, is alive and well. That's a response here. Michelle Johnson says, teach history. Don't teach slavery as simply forced labor. Students need to know that African humanity was stripped away in order to enslave. I mean, how can we teach that, Michelle Johnson, if we have states passing laws that basically say you can't teach a study that's going to make any group of people feel bad about or guilty for the thing that you're talking about? So if you are showing me a movie and white people aren't the heroes of that movie, white people are the villains of that particular movie, the way that people of color and black people have been the villains of most American narratives through most of our existence in this country, well, now that's a bridge too far. It's one thing for us to maybe slow down on the nasty stuff that we've done to you guys, but you can't take it too far where you start trying to hold the nation to account for the way that it privileged some and underprivileged others, and that there are material consequences for that long-standing problem. So this is where I want to end up at the end of the day, which is we are going to keep arguing about it. We are. Until it's faced, until it's done, until there's justice, until there's been some form of recompensation, until there is some reparative work, some reparations, some healing, some standing in the breach, the wound remains. I don't care how you pretty it up. I don't care how you try to do side projects that help you distract your thinking from improving it. But this won't get better by ignoring it. It won't get better by continuing to fight about it. I was very impacted last week by my research about Fred Rogers to prepare for a show. And it has me thinking less nasty sense and more in terms of how can you affirm the right course rather than constantly working on the wrong course? How can you look for the helpers in times of trouble? So right now in this situation that we're in, the helpers aren't the ones that are continue to stoke unfounded grievance of the privileged class. The helpers are not the people who are going to keep writing pieces that discount the empirical truths of our problems. They're not the people that are going to write long, meandering enemy imaging pieces about how all these wacky social justice warriors, and God forbid you should be a warrior for social justice of all things. How stupid a claim. How dumb of a claim. How dishonest, disingenuous, and privilege preserving of a claim to try and make. You cold, calculated, psychopathic fool. To really get at like people who are trying to achieve the one America as a cartoon, social justice warriors, the wacky things they do, that is a constant medication to numb the pain of not dealing with the real problems that you know exist. There's a reason why people fight for civil rights. human rights, social justice. They fight for those things because there's an absence of human rights and civil rights and justice. And God forbid you be the one who goes down in history constantly aligning with the wrong side. The side that deprived people of the vote, the side that provide people of life and liberty in their pursuit of happiness, the side that broke up families on purpose, the sides that burned down entire villages of people of color who had built something and had something to protect in life. The side that said in a court case called Dred Scott that one group of people have no rights that the other group of people are bound to observe or be held to, right? God forbid that you throw your hat in the camp that is part of the psychopathic camp that wants there to constantly be two Americas, the privileged and the powerful versus everybody else and the least of these. Your own Bible tells you that that's a problem and that you should fight it and you should stop it. I would love to leave you with a big answer, but there isn't a big answer. We are the big answer. Individual actions that we do is the big answer. Ways in which we find ways to put aside how hostile these things make us and angry and find one thing we can work on with one person that we can work with across one line of difference. Maybe that's a start. Maybe that's the exercising of the first muscle that we need. And it's not going to be easy. Just like being able to be honest with yourself and say, listen, I'm an adult. This stuff isn't easy. It's germane to the future of the country. I want us to be one America. I want us to be pro-democracy. I want every voice to matter. I want there to not be a single person who's hurt by our systems. I want our systems to work equally well for everyone. I want a nation where the Mennonite and the hippie and the conservative and the Christian and the Muslim and the Jew and the atheist and everybody can find their spot where they can live and pursue their happiness in peace with a just society that treats them justly through their systems of education and through commerce and through law. That's the vision. And we can't get there if we keep avoiding the truth of the barriers that prevent us from getting there. So I'm just inviting you to do one or two things. Join the two Americas or join the one America. The one America are the people who are fighting for everything I just said. The two Americas are fighting to make sure that we keep polarizing every single issue to the point that one group is living on the fumes of images of the other that continue a perpetual war. You can go with that. You can get with this or you can get with that. I would say you should get with this because this is where it's at. I love y'all. Thank you again for joining me for breakfast or brunch, whatever this has been. This has been another episode of Unpublic. So welcome to the free world. We are still not free, but we are trying to get there. Let's learn in peace. Let's learn together. Let's do all we can to get to the one America. I appreciate you all for giving me your time at breakfast, brunch, lunch, whatever this is.